finally here. After years of development and years of waiting, we finally have Blender 2.8. And it's a major departure from anything that we originally did before, and just a major departure from the entire layout in general. So this scene looks a little bit different only because I've saved over the startup file, but it looks fantastic. The layout is very nice. This is very easy to get to. I don't really know if I can still do... No, you can't. Oh, yep, that's something else that's changed too. Oh, they brought that back. I just noticed that they brought those back. So there's a lot of stuff that I've noticed that they've changed and done differently from the original version of Blender that I do kind of like, but also at the same time don't. So it's better for us to like take a deep dive and see like what they've changed. So the most obvious thing that they've changed is of course the layout. So everything is just very refined. Like very easy to look through, very easy to see, and it's easy to tell what is what and what is where, essentially. This is still a little bit confusing over on this side. I should bring my pen to show you. There it is. So this panel over here used to actually be all the way down here at the bottom. Or actually more so in this section here. And it was just these little icons that were about this big that were all individually set up. Like that. And then the reason for why I was saying that I kind of was wondering if this was still a thing is because you could actually shift, click, and have multiple transform settings on any given in the scene. So let me show you. So here's Blender 2.79. So if we go down here, obviously we have our transform, rotate, and scale. But if you shift click them, you could actually have two different little options right then and there without having to worry about going back to these buttons. There's a lot to love here and a lot to potentially hate here. So I went ahead and did some fooling around and testing out like what exactly this new version does. And the lighting, as you can see, is fantastic. It looks great. I'm going to go ahead and bake the indirect lighting just so I can see. Okay, so there's not really that much of a change. But something that's actually that was kind of a problem for me was the fact that emission materials don't necessarily work like how they used to. And here's what I mean. So if we go ahead and... Oh, wrong button. If we go ahead and add in a UV sphere, I'm going to scale this down a little bit, bring it over here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back over here to the material. I'm going to change the principle to an emission shader right here. And I'm going to make this red, and I'm going to crank this up to maybe, let's see, 50? Yeah, 50 should be good. And as you can see, it doesn't affect my little monkey head here. And the only reason why it looks like this is because I've got bloom effect going on. So, and if I go back over here and I turn this off, bloom shuts off. And it's instant. But you can see that that emission material doesn't actually affect the model at all. So this was something that kind of confused me at first because I'm used to emission materials just working. So like I would say, like, why doesn't that work? But this works. If I add in a point light, it automatically affects... Yeah, so I was wondering what was going on. It turned out is because they actually added something new into Blender known as light probes, which are basically these big like volumes, I guess you could say, for rendering. So what you do is you basically add that in, you hit bake cube map or whatever, and it actually creates all this information for you. And it's very convenient. I like it. And these things are actually editable. You can edit them. So I'm going to change the fall off to maybe just be all the way out, make a smooth transition, and then bake. And it evens everything out and makes it look a little bit better and a little more realistic. And I like that. And then something else too is that, say, if you add in, let's say if you duplicate Suzanne here and move her to the side, I'm also going to move the light probe over to the side here and scale it up just a little bit, and then move this back here and up. As you can see, that information, that light information, is still there because it's baked in. So delete, and I'm going to go ahead and actually make the material for this one be different. And another thing that they've actually done is that if you add these things into a collection, so I hit M and then move to collection 1, let's just say, and you go into light probes, you can actually go down here and then choose a collection for it to affect, and it won't affect anything else except for what's in that collection. So we go to delete. Then if we go to bake, and delete that and hit bake again, it affects it. And then this one starts going back, this one starts affecting it again too. So it'll only affect those really. Anything else you want it to affect, you actually have to add that into the collection too. So it's really nice and I like it. Now there are some things that did bother me, like it's kind of hard to get used to after the first initial bit, but when as you start getting to the rendering, I guess it'll start becoming easier. And that's really the only thing I've played around with so far. I haven't done any sculpting or anything like that yet. So I'm gonna reset the file. I'm going to go ahead and delete the monkey head, and I'm going to add back in a sphere. It's not bad. However, I will say it's not my favorite sculpting software. But what it does feel like is that they actually did fix kind of that issue I had for a long time with Blender in terms of the sculpting program. And that is when you zoom into something, you get that weird perspective shift. Now, obviously you'll start to clip through the mesh in some way, but that can easily be fixed with your clipping settings. Because in ZBrush, what you can actually do is you can zoom really far in and not actually clip through the mesh. However, sometimes ZBrush will have that weird issue where you actually do clip through the mesh and it inverts the normals. I don't know how to deal with that, but this is pretty good so far. So I'm going to try and do something a little bit different with this one. Well, I must say I'm pleasantly surprised. I'm enjoying myself with this sculpt. Blender's sculpting system in the past, to me, hasn't really been what I've wanted, and that's mainly because I've come from ZBrush. I was trained in ZBrush, that's what I know, and so I've tried to apply ZBrush to this, and sometimes it's failed. And that's mostly because I'm trying to make one program into a program that it's not. And I must say I am so happy with the improvements that they've done, because not only that, well, yeah, it's that, but they've done a lot to make this program be as great as it can be, because they're trying to attract the outside audience. So they're trying to get people that work in the industry, that work with ZBrush and Mudbox, and bring them to this. And allow me to say, this is just freaking great. I'm having an absolute blast using this program, and especially just this update that they've done is fantastic. Overall, I am super happy. This came out incredibly well. Now, the main thing is that what the Blender Foundation is trying to do is they've been trying to make Blender be a little more user-friendly to people who are not really users of the software. So they optimized this sculpting section to actually be more useful for people who do ZBrush and Mudbox out in the industry. And what they wanted to do was bring people in who used like Maya, used ZBrush, used 3ds Max, or any other software package, or even Cinema 4D, and bring them into this and make it be something that's more familiar to them and just a little bit easier to use. Now, there are some things that I do not specifically like about this kind of form of sculpting. Like, I'm not too big on the way that the camera perspective works, but honestly, with the quality that I can get out of the sculpt, I'm honestly pretty happy with this. It's not too bad. Let's see. I'm gonna move this face in just a little more because it's thinking it needs to be pushed in, pushed out. Yeah, it's looking a lot better like that. Alright, object mode. So, I'm just gonna go ahead and do some extra stuff here. Now, what I will say though is that it has obviously some way to go. I mean, the next update that they do isn't going to be for some time, because, God, Blender 2.8 has been in production for over 4 years, and it's finally out to the public and out to all the different developers and artists who have used it for, well, since almost the beginning. I mean, I've been using Blender for, for about, I think maybe 6 years now, and each update that they've done for the software has always been really impressive and always been really nice, because they add in a lot of features that you see in industry softwares. And this has so far been really good. I'm liking the sculpting phase, so I'm gonna go ahead and save that out, and I want to go ahead and move on to other sections of this too. So I finally got this thing set up, kind of. I don't really know what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to get the grease pencil to actually work so I can do something. not bad. I mean, if I put a lot more work into it, then it'll look a lot better, obviously. So I think that's going to be it for this video. I don't think I'm going to do anything else. I don't really think there's any need to model. Only because, well, really, I don't think there's any need to do it. Blender has come such a distance from what it used to be. I think that's the correct term. But it's definitely a vast improvement of what it used to be. And what it can potentially be in the future going forward. Like, once Blender gets to 3.0, I can imagine it's going to take on Maya. Or it could potentially even dethrone Maya. I don't think it's going to be able to take on programs like ZBrush, though. Only because the tool set for ZBrush has been refined to a point where it's very, very good. And it's going to take a while before Blender actually reaches that level of quality as well. But I'm hopeful, because after seeing what I was able to do with all of this and just trying out everything, I can definitely see Blender being one of the biggest competitors in the 3D industry. Alright, well, I think that is going to be it for this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked it, click the like button down below. If you have an idea for something you want to see me make in the future, leave it in the comments. And if you want to see more projects like this in the future, hit the subscribe button. And if you think there's anyone that would probably like this kind of content, please share it with them. Alright, well, that's it for today. That's it for this video. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.